We have to know the learner, we have to know the demands of what we're asking them to do, and then we have to know what to do. And this all has to happen with our in-depth understanding of the industries we're working in as well. Fair enough? And so how do we know the learner? Well, we've got lots of different ways. We've got our experience, we've got our gut feeling, we've got types of assessment. Our organisation may have some assessment we use, and now, of course, we've got the Australian Core Skills Framework, and that's going to become more available to us as they develop the online assessment tool, which will map exactly to this. So,
can I just ask, do you know when that's going to happen, Jen?
The question is, when is that going to happen? The tool, well, I know that they're trialling it at the moment. They will, no, we haven't got an exact date, unless anyone can give me an exact date. We had it in New Zealand, actually, Australian Council of Education Research developed the New Zealand tool, which we've been using for some years. And so I'm reasonably familiar with using it because it looks like it's going to be a similar model. I think it's going to be available pretty quickly, actually.
My understanding is February next year.
We have somebody saying the understanding is February next year. Well, it's on its way, so we're going to talk about it as if it's pretty imminent. And the demands are the same. The tool will help us map with the learner to the demands, because more and more now, many industries are already doing it. They're mapping the text, the documents we're giving out to the learners, so we know where they come in terms of the levels on the framework. So those things, knowing the learner, knowing the demands, help us know what to do. They go side by side with our experience, our observations, our our instincts as trainers. Yes, sir.
When you say observations, is that observations of the people who present themselves? That's one of the things that is very critical.
Correct. And our observations of what's required in the workplace. We're all going to be working in different contexts. Some of us are mainly in classrooms, some of us are out there in the workplace. So it's a combination of all these things. That even talking about this sort of stuff's complex because we work in so many different contexts. Okay, so I'm going to deliver today as if you're my students, and I'm having to teach you today about dealing with a very dangerous chemical, ammonia. And so I would pre-load this information to you by giving you some talk. We would actually now, if we were in a proper class, break into a discussion group, talk about what those images tell us. We might have a discussion about the HAZChem symbol ammonia. We might talk about what we know about ammonia. If we're in the caregiving sector, we might be using it all the time when cleaning and not even realise. So I just thought I'd get a generic thing. And I've also put a handout on your chairs, which is just some extracts, dense extract from an SDS, a safety data sheet, to do with ammonia, which for those of us who do deliver in health and safety and things, we do a lot of work with safety data sheets. I was trying to pick something that we might be able to sort of connect with. So that's what it is for the people who might be watching out there in cyberspace. It's a very dense, I've just taken a few extracts from it. Now also on your seats you'll find some snippets from the Australian Core Skills Framework and what sort of skills we're going to need to be able to read this text. I've gone a step ahead of you and I've mapped this text and decided to be able to read this text and comprehend it and be able to be efficient and effective in how I worked with it, I would actually need to be a level 4 in reading. The text is a level 4 in reading text. The tool will give us the facility of mapping individual learners, and it will also give us an overall class feel of what like a snapshot of where your class is at. This actually is from the framework. This is an individual learner, but for the purpose of this workshop, we're going to pretend it's an actual class. So you've got a class here where, on average, your readers are at step 3. And they need to be at step 4 to cope with this text. So this is knowing the learner, knowing the demands of what I'm asking them to do. And many industries are already doing this with lots of their materials. So immediately to be prepared, which is my first tip, with a Kiwi accent, my first tip, to be prepared, I need to know that there are going to be readers who are going to need support, and they're going to need the literacy embedded in here. So the average reader in the group will be able to read routine texts. This is a complex text. The safety data sheet you're giving them is a complex text. They are going to know how to deal with some specialised vocabulary. They're going to need to know a lot about specialised vocabulary to be able to make sense of this text. They are going to be able to use a range of strategies, which is great for comprehension. And of course, they're going to need to have other reading skills, but as I said, we're selecting comprehension and vocabulary. All the time, they're only going to be able to operate with routine texts, and they're only going to understand some of the words you're giving them. So already, as a prepared tutor, or trainer, or educator, you're going to be alerted to this, so that when you go into the class, you're going to be able to have some materials prepared that help them deal with the complexity of the text they're going to be looking at. If to be able to read this text successfully, you have to be able to select from a range of comprehension strategies, whereas in fact, these people in our class only can use some strategies. So already we're starting to think about the sorts of ways we will deliver this material to make it accessible to them. You all with me so far? Right? This is what you thought it would be about? Yeah? Good. So we've already then got a bit of information about the learners. We're starting to get a lot of information about the demands of what we're asking them to do. So that's where we come up with, how am I going to do? What do I do? So I've got to be innovative. You've just heard the previous speaker talk about all this. Normally I wouldn't stand at the front here glued to a camera. We'd be doing lots of stuff. I like a really interactive thing with a variety of stuff happening. But we also know from the research, we've got to be explicit. We've actually got to point out to them what a skilled reader does to make sense of this text. So we have to be obvious and clear. And one of the ways we do this is with the Think Aloud. So if we took that safety data sheet material in front of you, you would think aloud as a tutor. You might say, right, today guys, we've got to look at this material on ammonia. Oh, great. There's lots of headings and subheadings. Well, that's going to help us work our way through this. So already you're alerting them to some of the things in the text that will help them. You're saying you might be modelling the skill which we're going to be doing further on. So we've prepared, we know what they need to know, we know what they already know, and then we've got to work out how we're going to work through that. So to comprehend text, to understand text, we need to have a good vocabulary. Those of us who were lucky enough to pick up the skill of reading sort of as we grew up often are unaware of the words the people out there don't know. I'm privileged to be doing some research on this, and there are lots and lots and lots of words out there that people don't know, words that we think that they will know, and we're saying things like, on our sheet there we say, right, if you're using ammonia, you've got to be in a well-ventilated room, and you've lost them, because ventilated, what's ventilated mean? So there's words like that that are quite straightforward words. So we acquired our vocabulary with a lot of incidental learning. We were exposed to what the research would say, language-rich experiences. We were in environments where lots of people use language from when we were little wee kids. People told us what words meant. But we also probably had a bit of explicit instruction, and we also may have engaged with reading, I shouldn't assume. And the more we read, the more vocabulary we pick up. But we, as the educators, we have to find varied and interesting ways to introduce and reinforce new vocabulary. And we can do this just in our normal delivery. and maybe we do anyway, but it's just this is, because we've got to explicitly do it. And we know this because lots of people in universities have studied it and tell us we have to do it that way. So what I do a lot is use images, and it hasn't come out so well on the nice breeze block wall, but what we can use is images. We can think ahead of the sessions that are going to come up, and we can start preloading the vocabulary well in advance. We can make activities depending on our context. I did a lot of work in years gone by with youth at risk. That was a joy. And I used to turn some of this stuff into a week-long competition, you know, that they would be working on coming up with words related to the picture. You will have to think about how to slot it into your context. So there are lots of words from that image, lots and lots of words. Let's see if we can teach each other a new word from it. What do we call those levels?
Yeah, I was wondering that, are they gradations?
Well, there would be a good word that we could put up on our, we could have words of the week, or we could have this could be a brainstorm at the beginning of the session. They're called benches. Or they also might be called berms.
Ooh, how do you spell berms?
B-E-R-M, so I hope I'm saying it right. And we also, the inclined section is called a batter, B-A-T-T-E-R. Now, if we're training people to go into the mine industry, these words, okay, you're thinking, well, are they going to need them? But we know to comprehend text, we have to have wide, rich, and varied vocabularies. And I have always found that this becomes, people get really interested in vocabulary. It's like Sharon was saying downstairs, the more enthusiastic we are, the more. And so you get them coming, you have the picture on the wall, they arrive at class, they're already looking on their phones, looking through dictionaries, they want to come up with the most new words there. We've also got words like extraction, excavation. So then we could work on the suffix. Here come the prefix. There come the literacy words. The prefix X, E-X, meaning from. And we would explicitly teach that without it being sort of laborious. We'd just say, okay, we're going to be talking about extraction today, X. Okay, X is in lots of English words. It means it's coming from, so if we export something, we're sending it from the country. If we exit a room, we're going from the room. If we extract something, we're taking it out. And that's the think aloud, the teachable moment. We also, that can be called an open pit. It can be called an open cast. It can be called a quarry. We might be getting minerals out. So already we're getting lots of new language going. And that's not even to do with ammonia. But that's because I'm planning ahead for the session that's coming up. But how do we teach it? How do we teach it? We have to teach it by direct instruction. But because we are innovative and exciting and prepared educators, we slot that into our normal delivery. And depending on our context and depending on our learners, we use the technical language. We know from the research that all of us need this thing called metacognition. Here come the big words. Metacognition is we know how we learn. And so sometimes to know how we learn, we need these words like semantics, which means words. We need words like synonym and antonym, but you use your experience as the educator as to whether you use this language. So let's look back to what a level 3 reader can do in terms of vocabulary. A level 3 reader, which is the average in our class, they understand that some words and phrases have figurative meanings. They don't, as the level 4 reader, understands how words and word families may be generated, for example, from a root word. And to understand this text, they need that skill. So you'd get into talking about the fact that we need a lot of ventilation if we're working with ammonia, but in fact, vent is the root word there. And if we've got second language people, that's quite a hard one. So there's a vent on the roof. And then from ventilation, we're going to get lots of other words. This has got the fancy title of semantic mapping. We're going to be able to ventilate. We're venting something. But we also need to point out to them, depending on our context, that to vent something could also mean to just, I'm venting at you. It's got another meaning in the English language, which is the joy of the English language. We also can get into synonyms and antonyms, opposites, similar words. So a similar word for vent is to aerate, an opposite is to close off. And beside you on that plastic, on the chair in that plastic sleeve is what we would have done if this had been the way I normally teach. Just share it one between two, that just have a look at it. I make up activities like this all the time because we know that innovative teaching means we use collaborative approaches. So I would have templates made up like this where they, by the learners themselves, would sort out the words. And I think on that one, I've picked out key words from the SDS, the safety data sheet, and they would go through in groups, helping each other, because your average reader in that group might be a step 3 reader, but you're also going to have some that might only be a step 1 reader. You're going to have some that are step 5 readers. So you do lots of tasks like that. They are very little, sorry. Normally I'd have them nice and big and on laminated cardboard. You don't have to do it. I'll put the answers up. So that's what it would be. The black word would be the actual word from the safety data sheet. The green words are the synonyms. Some words don't have synonyms. The red words would be antonyms, and people might add to this. Once you've developed these resources, you be flexible about how you use them, and then we also just have the plain definition. People use these sort of things, yeah, in their teaching. Yeah, so this is how we directly teach vocabulary. So when someone says to you, what are you doing about your literacy and numeracy in your class, you'd be saying, I do a lot of direct, explicit teaching of vocabulary, and you're on your way. Vertical is a good one. Vertical, horizontal, really key, important workplace words, which are often new to people or they haven't got them sorted out. Right, so also we have to directly teach the use of dictionaries and thesauri, I suppose, thesauruses. More and more I'm using my phone in the class for this, and particularly, not my phones, their phones. My phone's usually hokey compared to what they've all got. And this is very useful for second language people. Like when we were trying to teach things like standard deviation and even things like quality and quantity. And if they type it in and then that tells them in their own language, they've instantly got the meaning there. I'm not afraid of that sort of stuff at all. I encourage them to be using it all the time. We also, the other strategy for teaching vocabulary is we directly use context. Okay, another way we use is the use of templates, and we can have all sorts of headings on these templates. Other names for ammonia would be it's a chemical, it's a cleaning product. Phrases like flush eyes, that's an interesting one. How do we flush our eyes? Some people might only know about flushing the toilet. Skull and crossbones. Second language learners, second language speakers, these will be new terms to them. Related ideas, new words like purge. These are all words from that safety data sheet. And I have these templates made up all the time. You scaffold them, so eventually they're coming up with their own headings about these things. This can be an activity for people who have finished stuff, if you've got a rolling enrolment. There's all sorts of variations and ways you can use these sort of activities in your class. So another one I like to use is humour, how not to fix the ventilation unit. And that can be up when they come into the room. There's all these ways of engaging them, getting them interested in what we're doing. And I'm watching the clock. How do we use, and then the comprehension strategies, the explicit comprehension strategy we'd be using is the use of headings and subheadings, because we know that to be able to see a piece of text like that safety data sheet, and know that what the headings and subheadings are for, you have to be a level 4 reader. We've done an assessment. We know many of the people in our class are only level 3 readers. So we would scaffold them in this as well. We might, in the beginning when we're first working with a class, we might have the headings and subheadings in, and then in their groups they would fill in the bullet point information. So I'd say, what do I do if I've got ammonia in my skin and my eye? And they go back to the safety data sheet and they'd fill it in. And slowly you'd withdraw the scaffolding so they would know themselves that those subheadings and headings are the information they use. We call those templates, graphic organisers. Another one is we'd need to teach them about sequence. If things need to happen in a certain time, again, initially you might have these filled in yourself, or do it as a big group, or do it in small groups. Okay, somebody's inhaled a toxin, what do we do? And as a group we'd go through and fill these in up on the whiteboard, or you'd have templates you hand out to them. Okay, the resources. There's lots of resources out there that are pre-done for us. This, love it or hate it, is an amazing resource. We just got to engage with it and start using it. And a lot of this information's in there. So you get given that SDS and you're told this is a level 4 text and you've got level 2 readers. This will help you with some of the stuff they will know and some of the stuff they need to know. Other amazing resources out there. I'm on just alerts from different websites. I went to a conference the other day. There's this one, what's that one? Oh, top 10 training methods. And that's got lots of information. It was free. It was developed by Well Funding over in the eastern states. And that address, you can just get it and that'll get sent to you. It's got videos and things that come with it. The Building Strength with Numeracy, VALBEC is the Victorian Adult Literacy Organisation. They've got amazing numeracy resources out there, free to us all. Unlocking Workforce Potential is just a new document that's come out. Australian Industry Group, which gives us some tips on things like that. What works, the ideas that work is also, and there's many others like this, but you've just got to be sort of on the lookout for them. And as a sector, we need to be passing these round to each other because it's all federal funding that's getting used to develop them all, and they're actually very useful. But I do encourage, not that we basically walk around with it all the time, but there is a lot of information, and that's what we have to do if we've done that unit, because getting back to my title, what next? We've done the unit. Next, we just have to start engaging with it and making it happen. Right, so we have got time for comments, questions, feedback.
One of the key problems that come from the Department of Transport. We have a lot of kids coming through the boat shed where I work. I'm not trained, but I am picking up people in year 11 and 12 who have dyslexia and it hasn't been identified. This relates to the reading process. We have ways of which of adjusting it, but are there other, there's nothing out there regarding dyslexia and language literacy and numeracy.
Right.
Any guidance I'd be happy to look at.
Well, here in WA, there are voluntary organisations, again funded by the state government, that the one in Perth is Read Right Now. Yes. And because to deal with dyslexic learners, it's a specialist.
I understand that. But the key factor I'm trying to get at here is, I'm picking this up, I'm not trained in year 11 and 12, about to finish their high school. Why hasn't it been picked up?
It probably has been. I was a school teacher. I always sort of duck for cover when I say that. Teachers do the best they can with great big groups of kids, just like trainers and educators do the best that we can. My advice is that with the dyslexic students, you can still work with them using a lot of the ideas that I've said here. It would be in a perfect world. So I'm actually a reading specialist, and in a perfect world, people like me would be working with 5 and 6 year olds, but it's a matter of the economics of it all. And
we found when we've done the theory assessment process, they're very brilliant people and invariably get 100% on the theory assessment. They learn from different ways, but it's just amazing along that line.
so as an educator, but you're prepared, so you know you've got some dyslexics in your group, so you won't be handing them out a dense sheet like the safety data sheet. You'd be using lots of different templates and visual ways of getting that information across to them.
Your template, like, you know, ammonia, inhale, along that lines.
Yeah.
Thing is, don't inhale. This is something you're breathing. They understand breathing. First aid measured, you know.
And all this vocabulary would have to be unpacked, not for the dyslexics. They will understand, they will have good receptive vocabs, they will understand the words, they won't be able to recognise them in print. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting, exciting challenge we've all got as trainers and educators. Any other comments or anything people from their own experience would add to that, or?
Just in terms of breaking that down, that text there, breaking that down for a level 1 reader, how would you do that?
For a level 1 reader, I would probably, depending on my time, the context, I would probably do it with lots of cards like this in groups that I would say our topic is ammonia, and from that I might get them to talk about 2 minutes to go. I'm getting the thing from, I would do a lot of pictures. You know, when I came up and did some work with your TAFE, we do lots of workplace pictures. I go out with a camera and they have to put them in sequence, and then you'd probably have to be quite clever in your group, so you'd have some better readers in there. And but yeah, I would be doing a lot of visuals and a lot of only 1 or 2 words on a card, because otherwise you're going to lose them. And we all know those SDSs just get handed out. Yes. Right, guys, this is what we're going to do today. And 5 of them have gone to sleep, 3 of them are in panic. It's just not going to happen. Okay, well, thank you. I normally have a lot longer than that, and we would do a lot more activities, but that's what I would be doing if I was embedding ammonia into literacy and numeracy.
Thanks.
Authorised by the Government of Western Australia, Perth.